There we go. Okay, I'm going to remove my spotlight there and share my screen again. Can everybody see that slide? If Louise, if you give me a thumbs up, if you can see that, fabulous. And the next slide has not come up. That's not so fabulous, is it? There we go. Right, on to the agenda for this evening. We're currently in the welcome bit. And then I'm going to move on to talk to you about Wilder Cumbria, which is Cumbria Wildlife Trust's community engagement programme, before handing over to the Westmorland and Furness team. We're going to tell you what priorities are for the climate and nature team and what resources the community development team can offer you. And then we've got a couple of case studies this evening as well. So Friends of Noble's Rest and the Sustainability and Energy Network in Staveley. I'll talk to you about sort of their experiences of community group work. And as I mentioned before, we've got the question and answer session to go on after that. So I'll take us on to Wilder Cumbria. So I've seen from the people who have signed up, most of you are Cumbria Wildlife Trust members already. Fantastic. So I won't go on too much about who we are, but I'm sure you'll know we're a wildlife conservation charity. So we restore and connect wild places, work with nature to tackle the climate emergency, and really importantly, support people to take local action for wildlife. And Wilder Cumbria is the name of our community engagement programme. Now, the idea of it is to work with communities to build this network to take that action. So it's about capacity building, really, finding out what it is that people are trying to do, and then working with them to make sure they've got the skills, resources, support that they need to just crack on and do it. So I've got a couple of case studies of things that we're currently working on, I've been doing recently. I'm working with Eden Housing Association at the moment, so just outside of this district, but they own a cluster of properties in Lowther, and their tenants pay a maintenance fee for the management of those communal areas. So if you see that little map of Lowther village there, if you've ever been to Lowther Park, you might have driven through this village. It's a sort of very historic looking model village. And those shaded blue areas there are all currently all the bits, the communal bits managed by the Housing Association. And they pay a contractor to just mow those bits several times a year and keep them looking as a formal lawn. But what they'd like to do is something a bit more nature friendly. So I've been working with them to consult the tenants to find out how they use those spaces and what they really value about them and maybe what they'd like to see in them. And then perhaps we can pay they can pay the contractor to, rather than just mow it, to some ideas at the moment to do some plug planting around the verge areas, put some more wildflower mixes to have some more shorter lawn bits around the houses, and maybe in that sort of circular area with the tree in the middle of it, let that grow much longer with some mown paths in amongst it as well. So sort of busy consulting with the tenants, carrying out a survey. I've hosted a drop-in event. We've put them in touch with the conservation area planner at the national park to make sure we're not doing anything that might damage the conservation area from a historical point of view. And then the next steps are going to be sort of coming up with a bit of a plan with the tenants about what's going to go where. So just sort of giving a bit of a helping hand and guidance and advice along the way there. They sort of know what they want to do. It's just putting it into practice, really, so that everybody's on board with the idea and we're not doing anything that upsets or offends any of the tenants. Another case study is Ambleside Action for a Future. So their biodiversity group got in touch with us because they wanted to gather residents' views on what improvements they might like to see in the area, and again, sort of what they valued about their wild spaces and how they use them. And that would help the group put together some funding applications. So Simon Wally, who was my predecessor on the team here, helped them create a questionnaire, and they took it out onto the streets to make sure they got plenty of resources. So just in one day, I think they got 87 responses and nearly 300 in total. And from that, they've been able to put together a bit of an action plan about what improvements they're going to carry out where and how they can seek funding to do that. So again, just sort of a bit of a helping hand for a group that had an idea about what it wanted to do, but just need a bit of support in kind of the practicalities of getting it done. And then I'll just sort of go on to tell you a little bit about the other things that we've got on our website as well. So there's lots more case studies, so you can get ideas of what other groups have been up to and how I've been working with them across the county. And there's loads and loads of guidance on there as well, from kind of wildlife friendly gardening to specific activities like building a bug hotel, planting a wildflower lawn. And you can also find out how you can get in touch with us as well and see what we can do to help you. But we've also got our Wilder Cumbria map. So the little picture, a little snapshot there of the South Lakeland part of that. And what we'd ask is, if you are doing something for nature, on whatever scale it might be, can you stick it onto the map? And that's helping us to build a network across the county. So when people get in touch saying, oh, I'm thinking of doing this, somebody's got in touch the other day saying they had about 3 acres of land they wanted to do something with. They had a bit of an idea, but they weren't sure. I could see from this map somebody else with similar sized land holdings doing something similar and able to put them together so that there's peer support out there. You can find out examples of what other people are doing and how they're doing it. So again, sort of building that strong network and showing just how much is going on across the county as well. So we're really keen on that. And then something else that we can offer as well is training and skills support. So whether that's throughout the year, we'll run some practical conservation days where volunteers can come and work with our wardens on reserves and learn skills, or get involved with plug planting sessions, for example. But I'm thinking now about our programme for next year and what workshops we could put on or what training sessions we could deliver. So I've set up a little poll. Ooh, I might have to stop sharing my screen so I can launch the poll. So hang on a second. Bear with me. Right. I've set up a poll with some ideas of what sort of things we could offer or some of our partners could offer as workshops. So once I launch it, if throughout the session, if you'd like to have a look and vote for your top 3, and then we'll come back to it at the end of the webinar and see which ones are most popular, and that'll help us kind of shape some of our events or training programs. Can everybody see the poll? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Right, I'll just leave that running in the background. So just have a look at that when you've got 2 seconds during the webinar. And now on, I'm going to hand over to Addy and Bryony from Westmorland and Furness Council. Thanks, guys.
I will just share my screen. Give me a second. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
No, because the poll is in the way. How do we get rid of the poll?
You can minimize it.
How?
If you've completed it, I think you can go to the little cross in the top right-hand corner. And if you haven't completed it, you can pick it up at the top and just drag it to the side of your screen.
No. Can't even see the top of it.
Ah. Are you on a laptop?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, I'm just wondering if you could click somewhere else and drag it around at all. Or potentially press the back button if you can see that.
No.
It might be a case that we send you any information we've got then possibly.
Or could we end the poll and run it after the presentation? That might be the other option.
Someone said in the chat that they've completed it and it went away. You might have to do that, Wendy, sorry.
Okay.
I'll about half the people have completed the poll. So if everybody could, everybody have a quick look at that poll. What I'll do is I'll close it. I'll close it as soon as possible, and then it's out of the way for everybody, isn't it? So I'll give you all just a minute just to have a look through that.
Just let me know when you think we're ready to go, Marion.
Yeah, I will. We've got 17 people have done it so far out of 24 people. What I might do as well is, just while we're doing that, I'm just going to post a couple of other links into the chat as well for some of the things that I've just talked about.
You've got a question as well, Marion. I don't know if you want to answer it now or...
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Does the Wildlife Trust a Wild Action Plan link / combine with this one?
No, it doesn't. No. So, but I know that all the sort of wildlife trusts across the country have got a wilder, whatever they might be, wilder Northumberland or wilder Cheshire maps going on as well. So it does kind of paint a national picture and look at it together. What I might do is get in touch with the Royal Society for Wildlife Trust, which is like the central team, and see what can we do with all the data that each individual trust is gathering, along with the sort of the national pictures like that. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jack. All right, just give us 2 seconds and I'll find those other links I was looking for. I just posted the link up to our Wilder Cumbria map in the chat, and I'll just add the sort of general pages where you can find a lot of our wildlife guides. And if you just want to get in touch with us, I'll put our email address in there as well. Okay, I think we're up to 75% on the poll, which seems pretty good to me. So I'm going to end the poll now, and we can then get that out of the way, can't we, for everyone? What I should hopefully be able to do is bring it back at the end and see sort of which has been most popular. But it looks, just having a quick look, it looks like sort of from a practical point of view, wildlife friendly gardening, and then perhaps help with fundraising and grant applications and things, which we might well be covering later on in the webinar as well. So thanks everyone for doing that poll. I end that. Oh, share results, that looks exciting. Oh, that's when you get to see all of it, isn't it? I'll stop sharing that and keep that out of the way. Right. Has that got the poll out of the way for everyone? Can everyone see Addie's presentation now? No, no comments. So Addie, would you like? Yeah, I'll hand over to you now.
I'll go ahead.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. So Bryony, Louise and I are from Westmorland and Furness Council. We're just going to go over a few ways that the council can help and support you. Next slide, please.
No, I'm having the technical.
Oh, there we go. So Westmorland Furness Council have produced a toolkit booklet to encourage and inspire support for local biodiversity. So there are lots of handy tips and advice within this booklet, from how to go about starting a biodiversity project, how to create biodiversity policies for your parish council, your school or your local area, how to create a map that identifies areas for biodiversity, and an appendix of different biodiversity features that you can create, such as a bee hotel or a pond. It will show you the best time to create these features and how to maintain them over the year. There will be copies of this biodiversity toolkit booklet in Kendal Town Hall in the reception if you'd like a copy. It's open from 9 AM to 4 PM on a weekday. I'll also put a link to a digital version as well in the chat. Next slide. So one project that the council is undertaking that you can get involved in is the Cumbria Local Nature Recovery Strategy. So the LNRS will aim to restore our biodiversity by drawing on existing data, strategies and guidance, along with local knowledge to encourage nature recovery and to make sure it happens in a way that can deliver it the most beneficial way that it can. The LNRS has developed key priorities, which are objectives for nature recovery. So restoring X amount of grassland, rich species grassland by 2035 as an example. And then they've also developed measures, so actions that can help to reach these priorities. So the draft versions of these can be found on the LNRS website, along with the mapping of areas of particular importance for biodiversity, which shows what we currently have for nature, such as SSSIs and nature reserves. And right now you can review them and give your feedback on these. So it's really important if there's anything you think should be worded differently in the document. You have until the end of November to give your feedback. Additionally, you can also contribute to the mapping by submitting any sightings of species you've seen in Cumbria to the Cumbria Biodiversity Data Centre, which will also go into the LNRS mapping. And once this is done with the draft priorities and measures, once we've got the final version, you can look at these and look at your own local mapping, see which areas you could bring in species or what measures you could take to improve the biodiversity in your local area. Next slide, Bryony. Thank you. So this is the LNRS website and the email address. I'll also share this in the chat along with the CBDC data recording for species. Next slide, please. Another project we have that you can get involved with is the Get Cumbria Buzzing Not Buffering. So this is a project which has been funded by Fibrous and delivered by Cumbria Wildlife Trust. So the project is about planting for local pollinators such as bees, butterflies and moths. In the South Lakeland area, Fibrous are looking for sites in Ambleside, Flockburn, Ulverston and Grange over Sands. So if you have a site that you would like to put forward for planting, it could be plug planting or it could be a flower meadow. So what would the funding provide? The funding would only provide the initial cost of the wildflower meadow, so it wouldn't include maintenance, and this is for 10 years the wildflower would last, so you'd need to take that into account if you want to put your site forward. So if you need a contractor to cut the site because it needs cutting once or twice a year, you'll need to consider that cost or any equipment you'd need to buy. So it will only contribute to the initial establishing the wildflower. And the support you'd get, the funding is in collaboration with Cumbria Wildlife Trust. So a pollinator officer will help you establish the wildflower meadow alongside with creating a 10-year management plan. So this will guide you on how to maintain the wildflower meadow and how to take care of it when you need to cut it. If you have a site you would like to submit or have any further questions, please email Libby Bateman from Fibrous. The email address is on the screen, but I'll also share it on the chat. I think we're going to send out an email at the end of the webinar as well with any key contacts. And then I'll pass it on to Bryony, who's going to talk about trees now.
Yeah, so this is really quite a basic slide, but as a council, we're really interested in increasing tree cover and tree canopy cover within Westmorland and Furness. So if you've got any ideas about trees, hedges, you want to set up a community orchard, then please get in touch with us at futuretrees@westmorlandandfurness.gov.uk. And I kind of look after that email address, so I'll deal with any kind of queries that we get in, and I can let you know any relevant funding that might come up in the future for tree planting schemes. So we've recently run a community orchard and we're supporting 12 across Westmorland and Furness. So being able to run something like that in the future or other tree planting would be really interesting. So yeah, if you're interested, get in touch, please. And then that's it from me on trees.
Okay, so as I said earlier, I'm a community development officer for South Lakeland. There's 5 of us in our team, and we each cover a geographical area where we try to help community groups, organisations with any sort of development they may want to do, linking in with other groups or other projects, finding funding or assisting with any governance, constitutions, that sort of issue. So I've just got a couple of things to share with you around funding, one of which is our new Westmorland and Furness Council for Community page. So this is how the page looks, and it's about where you can register. So you can register as a community group, parish council, organisation to search for funding on a national database. I had a little look earlier, and you can draw right down to South Lakeland. So I'd advise that's something that you do when you go into the search engine. And I put nature projects, and you can tick environment, and it actually came up with 4 funders when I looked earlier. One of them's the Hadfield Trust that you might have heard of. One of them was the Walney Community Extension Fund, which does come across South Cumbria. It is not just the Furness area. Another one was an organisation in Leeds that mentioned it would fund groups within a 50-mile radius. So I guess that's where wherever you might be located in South Lakeland, depends whether you meet their criteria. And the final one was our own Westmorland and Furness Community Grant Programme. So as I've put at the bottom of that slide, we have a South Lakeland locality board, and we have a locality board plan. Unfortunately, at the moment, we've got it ready to go on the website, but it actually it isn't up there yet. So I can share it with you via email if anybody was interested. I'll put my email in the chat, and you're welcome to get in touch. But one of the key priorities of the South Lakeland locality board is around climate action and increasing biodiversity. And I've just taken out one of the priorities directly from the plan there, and it's to support local communities and community groups with an interest in addressing climate change and promoting biodiversity. So if you've got a project locally on the ground, those community grants are up to £5,000. Again, I'll share the link to our community grants page from the website in the chat in a moment, and have a look at the criteria. The application forms and the guidance are all on the website as well. But please do get in touch. I support that locality board group, the working group that looks at climate action and biodiversity, so I can give you any advice on applications. The other organisation I just wanted to mention at this point was Cumbria CVS. They also have, and again, I'll share their webpage. They have a funding newsletter, which they bring out every month, and they also have officers that help with things around governance and funding and completing application forms. So depending on how much support you want, we could probably help a little bit, but they probably could dedicate a little bit more time to that. So yeah. I'll share my email, and anybody that's interested, if you've got a project and you're looking for funding, please do get in touch. Okay, so thank you. I'm just going to hand over now. We've got also on the call Polly Straker, who's another one of our Westmorland and Furness officers, who deals with parks and open spaces. She will introduce herself, and a community group, Friends of Nobles Rest. So I think if I'm handing over to Polly, please, just to share how they work together around nature and biodiversity on Nobles Rest.
Thank you, Louise. Hi, so I'm Polly Straker, and I'm currently the interim strategic lead for parks, open spaces and cemeteries. We also have John Wright with us this evening, who's the chair of Nobles Rest, and hopefully he might be able to answer any questions or add anything I miss. Nobles Rest is a beautiful, tranquil park in the heart of Kendal, And if you've been down there this summer, you will have seen the beautiful central beds, which are full of perennial plants. There's a picture of that on the slide there. And the credit for this needs to go for the Friends group for the amount of work they put into this. If we could have the next slide, please. So SLDC and now Westmorland and Furness have been supporting this very active Friends group since 2015. We had some capital funding to improve the drainage and the accessibility in the park along with a public consultation, the Friends group worked with the council on deciding on the priorities. Since then, they have regular meetings in the town hall with officer support, and the Friends have applied successfully for numerous funding pots to continue with the improvements. The park consists of Noble's Rest, the main sort of central park. This is previously known as Maud's Meadow, so some people may still call it that. There's the adjoining woodland, which is Swine Parrock, and then the meadow known as Townview Field. There are approximately about 45 people in the Friends group who have a passion to improve the park, and around 15 members attend the meetings and the work parties that we hold. A management plan has been produced detailing the aims and ambitions of the group, and it's a live document and discussed at the meeting so that everything's agreed. The advantage of working with support of the council is that we can ensure the work is suitable and that it's manageable. We also need to liaise with our colleagues in ground maintenance and our arboricultural teams. So if I could have the next slide, please. So the Friends group have done some amazing work in the park. Not only the spectacular central beds, which they weed and mulch and chop as required, but the tricky work of clearing ivy and sycamore saplings in the woodland, which is, those of you that know it, it's a slope and it can get very slippy and slidey, so it's quite challenging working there. They've been planting new trees. We lost a lot of trees in the wood in Storm Arwen in November 2021. We've also created 2 wetland areas by planting bog plants. One of these is at the bottom of Noble's Rest, close to the hostel, and the other one is at the bottom of Townview Field. They've also worked very hard in pulling the thistles that are beginning to strangle some of these plants. They've created a community orchard currently with damson trees, but then additional apple trees are going to be planted later this winter. Annual bulb planting is done along the path edges, which adds spring colour, and then larger tree planting is being done in the central area. And again, the funding for this has come from the Friends group applying for various grants. The group also worked with partners such as the former Cumbria County Council, who were our flood authority, the Environment Agency, South Cumbria's Rivers Trust, to create a natural water course through Townview when the old culvert there began to fail. This is a smaller example of the work done in the uplands to slow the flow of water if we should have a flood incident. It includes some Kaplunk dams, so it's quite interesting to see it when it's got water in it. There are a couple of interpretation boards there which explain the principles and also the wildlife that can be seen in this area. Okay, the next slide, please. In the first years, South Lakeland District Council funded the insurance for this group to allow them to have work parties without a council officer on site. Prior to this, officers took part in Friday morning garden sessions, weather permitting, which were really well attended. The Friends now are able to fund this insurance annually, so they're able to work on the park without an officer present, and they help to keep it looking great. Continental Landscapes will often assist, and the group are also well supported by the Kendal Conservation Volunteers and the Civic Society, and more recently Cumbria Wildlife with the Planting for Pollinators scheme, which was planted at the top of Townview Field and is doing really well. Some members of the Friends are also in the Civic Society or the Fellside Forum. We have a good partnership with all these groups. If you don't know the park, go and have a look. It is a lovely place. Gets really busy on a summer's day, We'll have a nice lot of benches to sit and enjoy the park. It's just at the back of Marks and Spencer's, so you can go and get your lunch and then sit in the park and enjoy the sunshine. We have lots of children running about, so there's a little bit of something for everybody there. And it shows really how working together, how the Friends working together with the council, we all have a similar goal, and it just shows what we can achieve. So that's been a very quick snapshot of what the Friends of Nobles Rest do. John, I don't know whether you would like to add anything. Okay. I don't know whether, I think John's joined the meeting, hasn't he?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Hi, John.
Yeah, sorry. Hello, sorry, I had it on mute. I don't think I've used Zoom since the pandemic, so I'm a bit out of it. So has anybody got any questions rather than me repeating what Polly said? Hello? Sorry,
No, I can't see any hands up, John.
all right, okay.
Okay.
I'll probably just add that there's not a lot to add, but I think when Polly was talking, you know, it's been a good relationship with the council that we've built on. It's helped a lot having Polly there all the time, you know, for the last 10 years. So having those long-term relationships helps quite a lot. And I think the other thing that was being quite key for us is developing a network of people that Polly and organisations that Polly mentioned. So Kendal Conservation Volunteers. I've just been in their place in Dog Kennel Wood, and we've selected 21 different trees, different varieties of native species that they're not big trees, but they have the advantage of being cheap and locally grown. So we're going to be planting them in the wood this in the next couple of months probably. So that network, and then the funding, we've probably raised over the last 10 years I think it's about £34,000 now. Quite a bit of that has come from the council because we've been able to access funds from the council that the council wouldn't be able to access themselves. And then we've had other funding from places like the postcode lottery, about 4,000 from there in 2 fundings, and then some private individuals. So the network's been quite key. Obviously, money is quite key. The policy that Polly mentioned, insurance, is from the Zurich. If anybody else needs one, it's quite good. I can see a question from Isabel about recruiting volunteers. It's not that easy, really. I think would be true, and we probably need to put more work into it. I guess, you know, we have advertised, we've had things in the local Gazette, the Westmorland Gazette, asking for volunteers. I guess because we've been able to develop a network with other organisations, when we need volunteers, we can generally get enough for the work parties, which is one of the reasons we haven't maybe put as much effort into it as we should have done. I guess quite a few of us are retired, so it would be nice to have some younger people, but we realise that a lot of them are quite busy with families and jobs and things like that. So that would be, I think, in terms of keeping the volunteers going in the future, it would be useful to get some younger volunteers who might take over. And any other questions or anything?
You've got another one in the chat there that says, what kind of scale are the wetland habitats?
The scale, we've got 2, and we try to work around, there are areas in the park that are wet naturally. So the scale of them, one of them will be about 10 meters by 8, and the other one a bit small, about half that size. And the Friends bought, through with some funding, we bought a variety of different plants that can thrive in wet areas. they tend to be a little bit damp in the summer and then flooded in the winter when we get heavy rain. So water does accumulate there, but these plants have coped with it quite well. Things like marsh marigold, flag iris, willow, dogwood, those sort of species. So, and they're doing quite well. Anything else?
You've got
Could I chip in? I can't see a thing to put a hand up. Could I chip in about some similar stuff going on in Ulverston?
Yeah, just John's got one more question, so I'll let him answer that, and then say your part, Kim. So Jack asks, Noble Rest Biodiversity Enhancement is ACE. Who services the admin side?
Well, we have on the committee, we've actually only got 3. We had 4, but 1 had to drop out. So we have a secretary who takes all the minutes from the meetings, and she's quite IT literate, so she keeps email lists of all the members and emails those out. I would say that I do quite a lot of the organising. Some other people do help. The work I get quite a lot of help with. But in terms of organising, I guess I do quite a lot. It helps that I'm retired. And other people, help out in various ways. So we've got, somebody puts algae killer on this wooden squirrel that we've got in the wood to keep it algae clear, and different people are taking on different responsibilities in a small way. But I've been, me and my wife's the treasurer, I'm the chair, and then we've got Deborah, who's the secretary. So we keep it going, I guess. Without us, well, somebody else would have to step in, really. And getting people to take responsibility for organising isn't that easy, but we have had quite a lot of helpers.
That's brilliant. Thank you, John. I think that's it, isn't it? It's just finding the right volunteers with the right skills and interests to help you with the group, which is a challenge, isn't it? But when you find them, they're absolute gold dust.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kim, if it's all right with you, if we can move on to Isabel, who's got a presentation about SENS, and then we've got some time at the end. So after Isabel and questions, can we come back to you? I'd love to hear a bit more about what you're up to in Ulverston. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Right, I know I've seen you, Isabel. I know you're there somewhere. Fantastic to see you. And Brian, he's got your slideshow. So Brian, if you can share your screen, and Isabel, just let us know when you want to move on to the next slide. But Isabel is from SENS, which is a very busy group in Staveley that works across a number of different initiatives. And Isabel's going to tell us about what they do, how they got established and structured, and some of the sort of the challenges or things that they're looking at the moment. So thank you, Isabel. I'll hand you over.
Thanks, Marion. Yeah, so as Marion says, I've been asked to talk a bit about our structure and how we operate. Yeah, very happy to take questions as we go along, but I might not see you, so it's probably best to do them at the end. Can we have the next slide? So a bit of a mouthful, no pithy title here. Sustainability and Energy Network in Staveley, SENS, or as the website is now, it's just Sustainable Staveley. We were formed, can you believe it, 17 years ago by a group of people in November 2007, some of whom are still on the committee, which shows true dedication. The remit then was to promote sustainability and biodiversity in our local area. And obviously 17 years ago, the situation with biodiversity loss and climate crisis there was a very different take on things. Over the last few years, as you can see in this leaflet, we've sort of shifted our emphasis to talk more about, the global climate emergency and really focusing on things that are happening, that are helping to tackle the climate crisis, albeit obviously on a local scale with the resources and the level of interest locally. So next slide, please. Just a bit about the structure. We're a constituted group. We're an informal group. We've got a small core, and Wendy actually is on the call tonight as well. She's a member of SENS and on the committee. A constituted group just meant that we can be quite flexible, but we still have the ability, obviously, through that structure, to apply for grants. We have an AGM, we have a committee, we have bi-monthly meetings, we have a bank account and insurance. We have a simple bookkeeping procedures process and various policies and procedures, logo and email. And the reason I'm sort of talking about all of that is that gives us a structure that enables us both to operate and to apply for funds. It gives us a platform from which we can talk and have a position, but it also means that other projects and campaigns that come along that either are responding to a local issue, or there's a local person or a group that are very keen to take something on, or there's a particular expertise in something, means that SENS can offer that useful platform and currently we've got 2 projects, community e-bikes, Staveley Community e-bikes and the Clean River Kent campaign, that basically are supported by SENS, which is an incredibly useful structure. Next slide, please. In terms of our activities, this is all fairly obvious stuff. I mean, those of you that are sort of part of a group, this is all quite familiar, but we have bi-monthly newsletters and updates, and those go out to as wide a sort of list of people as possible, people who sign up. But we also have got on there a whole range of partners and other organisations, and also the media. So in one fell swoop, that newsletter with the updates is going out to all those people who can respond and find out about what we're up to through that. So we put quite a lot of effort into getting our newsletters out. They're a really useful tool. We've also got a Facebook and an Instagram page. I'll come on and talk a bit more about Facebook in a bit, but that's a really useful form of communication about getting messages out and getting reactions and thoughts. The website, part of a recent Westmorland and Furness grant gave us some funding to actually overhaul our website, which was really, really useful. So we sort of restructured it because we found that it's really efficient. You can put all your information onto the website in these events and notice boards or news, and then you can do links to those. So you can keep your communications really short and pithy, but with links to those. So we've had a real go at restructuring, and also, you know, over time the website, it just needs to be revitalized. So we've done that. We do presentations and talks and stands, a lot of practical activities. I'll talk a bit why we do lots of practical activities. As I said, we've got pilot projects that sort of, we're there as a structure to support other initiatives and campaigning. And, you know, as with any group, we have a sort of a variety of people with different roles and skills. Some people are keen on the practical sides, other people are really keen on the campaigning, other people it's about actually engagement with other councils and other organisations on issues and going out to meetings. So yeah, those are our sort of range of activities. Next slide, please. I mean, you can see on our website, if you go onto it, I should have put it on here actually, it's very easy, sustainablestavely.org.uk. I'll pop it into the chat at the end of the talk, but on our website, we've sort of tidied up and put all of our past projects into sort of folders and drop downs on the website. I guess this was before my time, but the LEAF project was what I think we really got going with. And we got a grant to talk to residents and actually do door-to-door advice and provide materials and information about draft proofing and insulation. You know, and 17 years on, we're still like in a position where that's actually really important still. So we could do that whole project all over again. Transport, I'm aware this isn't necessarily about nature, but it just gives you, we're just a sort of broad range of initiatives, all of which contribute to supporting protecting the environment. The Dream Travel Initiative was something which was really successful actually, and actually through a whole range of engagement programs, one-to-one travel planning, actually trying to get people to think about their travel habits. We established a community land trust in partnership with somebody who was a professional in the area, just to look at local need, and did lots of undertaking sort of surveys about what people wanted and what the community actually had in terms of housing stock. And then one of the other things specifically about biodiversity was we worked with a whole series of local filmmakers to talk about, we did a little film describing what biodiversity was in very simple terms. And we also talked about issues that were relevant to Staveley, such as sustainable farming, local growing, sustainable economies, etc. So those were some of our past projects. Next slide, please. In terms of practical activities, I think one of the things we found is people want to get engaged and feel like they're doing something and making a difference. So practical activities are a really good way of hooking people in to things. So we've done, through the Clean River Kent campaign, we've done river litter picks in partnership with the Lakeland Canoe Club. We've got somebody in the village who's really keen. She does an annual litter pick. We've got a community orchard. When I say it's we've been given it, we're allowed to harvest the damsons and apples in return for maintaining it. So we have a whole series of work parties up there over the year. We've done projects with South Cumbria Rivers Trust on river dipping with young people. Workshops, we've got regular repair cafes that are just sort of starting to build momentum, apple grafting workshops. We've done street orchards. At the moment, we've been doing, well, over the years, we've had a really close relationship with Danny at the Cumbria Wildlife Trust, who's been doing all sorts of fantastic stuff in Staveley. And we're just working now, again, this is sort of supported by a current Westmorland and Furness grant, at looking at really engaging the young people in Staveley at some sort of sustained engagement with the craggy woods on our doorstep above us, and other nature activities. So that's a sort of partnership that's been growing slowly over the years. We do composting projects. We've got a hot bin up at the school, and Wendy, actually, who's on the call, has been doing all sorts of gardening projects and composting schemes with the school. And then we've done some projects in public spaces, actually trying to make them as wildlife friendly as possible, biodiverse as possible. So encouraging planters with a whole range of different types of plants. And we've done a small tree planting project recently, which was quite complicated. That maybe we can discuss some of the logistics of getting some of these schemes off the ground when we come into the question and answer session. Next slide, please. Other activities, well, I mentioned earlier, but talks and exhibitions, surveys, always a good way to engage the community and get their feedback. Things like quizzes and other things, again, about bringing people in. As I said, we've got the e-bikes project, and we've done various case studies, which again are trying to showcase, these are people like you, and you could be one of them, and trying to encourage people to think about trialling the community bike scheme. And the campaigning, the Clean River Kent campaign, we talk a lot about green space, but obviously, the blue space in our communities are really important as well. And the River Kent is so special. So we've been running quite a major campaign to protect the River Kent and its flora and fauna. Okay, next slide. So I'll just talk a little bit about some key lessons learned, and maybe that can sort of segue into the questions and answers and get us thinking about how can we make our projects and our communities as successful as possible. I think what we've learned is understanding your audience is really important. Like, we can think we can all have ideas about what people want to do and how they might get engaged, but actually the messages and the projects really need to be appropriate to your local community and the people in it. And so sort of developing, it's a bit of a marketing tool, but developing these sort of pen portraits of who might be out there in your community and why they might be interested or why they might not be interested was something that we sort of had a little go at, and it actually was really quite useful to sort of understand who the different types of people are to engage with. The social media I touched on before, the Facebook, we're really lucky. We've got somebody who's slightly younger generation who's come in and is working with SENS now, and she's using Facebook brilliantly to get messages across. And actually that cross-linking with other Facebook pages in the community, then it goes out through those other trusted sources to their audience and on. So that's been very useful. I think that I touched on it, but the whole idea of keeping the content really local and using case studies so people can see, oh, well, I know her, or he's done that. That's just that I could do that too. And the practical activities, the way that we really get the biggest engagement, we've run now our apple grafting workshop in partnership with SLOG, South Lakes Orchard Group, for 2 years, because it was so popular in the first year. And it kind of took us a bit by surprise, but I think it was something that was really practical and people could understand, they could come along, they could learn a new skill. And so that was great. And, they knew it was being run by somebody who knew exactly, was professional, knew what they were doing. And I guess it's also, this is sort of just, again, common marketing, but just making sure that you're asking questions all the time to try and understand what people are thinking and feeling. So whether it's through surveys or quizzes or, using your social media to ask questions and encourage interaction. Again, we've refreshed our website and the materials, and that was really important. I think we've always taken the stance of being positive but realistic, and whether now we need to be a bit firmer in our messages. It's a tricky one. It goes back to what do your local community want? What will engage them? What will turn them off? How do you get them involved and listening to these important messages, but also feeling positive that they can do something at the local level to contribute. The partnerships, you mentioned it before in one of the presentations, but the working with partners has been so important to us. So, whether it's bringing in expert speakers who can come and work with us. We've had Jack Ellaby come and gave a talk about dark skies. We've worked with SLOG. We've worked with Cumbria Wildlife Trust, the South Cumbria Rivers Trust. We've all got this shared agenda, and we've got particular resources and expertise, and we can help amplify each other's messages. So that partnership is just, so powerful and important. And the other thing is really staying flexible and adaptable. So, we know that we need to keep listening and responding to local interest and demand. And, some things we try and they just go nowhere, and we get nobody turns up or nobody's interested. And it's really keeping your ear to the ground and finding out what local people are doing and wanting, and how can you support them in that. But all of this, I think, is, over the 17 years, we've learned that we've got a sort of profile now in the local community, and we work very closely with the parish council, with their community, the parish council community plans. SENS are the deliverer on quite a number of the community plans. And so, actually we're all part of this sort of community that's, you need all those connections, you need all those interactions in a small community to sort of ensure that there's climate resilience. We all sort of trust and understand and can work with each other. So we're going to need to share all our resources. So that's important that we can be at the table and do that. Next slide, please. The challenges, I think, it's a lot. We're having a lot of challenges, really, and we always have. I think the biggest challenge, and I was asking this question, is like, how do you recruit volunteers? And people are all very happy to have an event. They'll come along and they'll litter pick for an afternoon, but how do you get people to come in there and actually take on responsibility for sort of writing minutes or doing the nitty-gritty behind events and organizing things, or committing to the committee and admin tasks? I think what we've been trying to do is to break it all into small chunks and having very specific tasks that people can do. And being very clear in what we are asking, and making sure that, you know, these aren't commitments for long term. You know, you can dip in, you can dip out, but, you know, you can play a useful part. And also using projects, by actually having a project that encourages people, then they get involved, and then they might be willing to get you know, closer to the sort of the core of SENS. And again, keeping flexible, responding to local demands and issues, and finding out there's so many different things that we could do. It's finding out where there's passion in the community. You know, you've got to go with where the passion is and respond to that. Fundraising, I suppose the point on this is, and obviously there's loads of support, and I think you're doing a fantastic job with all these resources that you're providing to us, and we should make good use of them. And really, I think a lot of the funding we found, though, is for projects. And what we need at the moment is, we're all volunteers, and we put in a lot of time, but it's really hard to get admin support and funding for core admin and core tasks. So we're lucky enough to have somebody who's working, and she's actually paid a few days a week to work for us at the moment, but she is essential, and, you know, she does so much, and we really need that ongoing funding to keep her in post. And we can have a discussion around that. Budgets. We're lucky we've got Dave, who takes on the managing all of our accounts, and I think obviously with any group, as you grow or you take on things, there's going to be certain core costs. You talked about the insurance cover. We definitely have. The electric bike project has significant insurance requirements, and then if you're working with volunteers and doing anything practical, obviously you've automatically got insurance requirements. So that's an ongoing cost. You've got website and mail platforms, you've got annual subscriptions, the room hire, all of the sort of publicity. So, you know, we keep a really close eye on our income and expenditure, and we have been lucky with grants. But I think, you know, you can't just depend on volunteers to cover everything all the time. So, you know, you need to know what your core costs are. And I've talked already about engagement, about getting these messages across, and how do we get as much the time that we put in as volunteers, how do we make sure that we're getting the maximum return in terms of getting the messages out most effectively and getting people engaged? I think, again, going in and working with the school, we've got a good relationship with the school now, and that works really well because they have their own communication networks. They're used now to working with us, and they've obviously been working with Cumbria Wildlife Trust for a number of years as well. But using trusted voices as well to get your message out through these trusted voices in other voices in the community. And we've done loads of projects over the years, and some years we've taken on too much and we've been really stretched. So I think, you know, but I think it's a real challenge for small groups. It's like, how do you keep the large issues on the agenda, such as transport and energy and housing, and some of those more complicated, more involved projects? I know we're talking about nature here, but I mean, there's complicated, larger projects associated with nature as well. Sometimes it's much easier just to go with small, simple projects. But actually, you know, how can we how can we share resources? How can we work together to ensure that we can take on some of these bigger projects? And I think finally, the last thing that is so essential to all of how we've managed to keep going for 17 years with some of the people is keeping it fun and keeping it, you know, it's obviously we've got serious messages and there's lots of important work to be done, but actually making it fun. So having social events, having you know, activities, doing things like Green Week is a great opportunity to do lots of fun things with the community, quizzes and photo exhibitions and stuff. So yeah, that fun element is really important. It's hard sometimes to keep that in there alongside everything else that we're trying to do. So next question, next slide, please. So that's, I don't know if that was particularly answered. Hopefully you've got questions, and I might not have answered it, or the angle might have been slightly wrong, but I'm here to take questions and discuss if that's useful.
Oh, thank you very much, Isabel. So yeah, we've got a question from Claire. It says, Isabel, I'm curious about your trusted voices for communication. Could you give us examples of who these people are? It's something they struggle with at, say, Rowan Head.
Yeah. I think, so for example, the school is a trusted voice. So the headmistress at the Staveley School, we've built up a relationship with her now over the years. We've done various projects with the school. And I think now she's very happy they have a weekly roundup, messages that go out to parents and children. And she's happy to put our messages in there. So, you know, a trusted voice is somebody in the community who can take what you're doing. Other trusted voices, so for example, on our e-bike project, we've tried to get case studies of people who've used the e-bikes and described why they've used them, and then use those case studies and allow those people to tell in their own words why they got involved, what it meant to them. So it's people in the community that would be trusted voices. What other people have we used to get our messages across? Just trying to think of some of the other projects. Well, I suppose it's also getting in professional speakers who can take, you know, you might want to bring somebody in, you've got an issue and you've got a project you're working on, but if you get somebody else who's a professional in the area to come and give a presentation at the same time, they will also talk about it and they might attract attention. Yeah, there's lots of different avenues. Or you might have, I mean, body rehab. We've got a physio in our mill yard, and he bought into the whole idea of the e-bikes, and he's been promoting the e-bikes to his customers who are coming in who might want to use the e-bikes for rehab projects. So it's thinking about how you can use people in the community to sell your messages for you.
Thank you. That's really useful. Thank you.
Just a very practical question from me, Isabel. I know that some small community groups are really struggling to find banks who are willing to hold their bank accounts for them. So yeah, who do you bank with?
Co-op.
Co-op. Yeah, I heard them recommended as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave is brilliant. He sort of manages all our finances and things, and I'm sure if those community groups have got questions and would like to talk to him about how we set up the accounts, what needs to be done, etc., I'm sure he'd be happy to help.
Great, thank you. And you also mentioned sort of working closely with the parish council as well and sort of helping to deliver kind of the local plan and things. So I think that's just sort of that great partnership between having a community platform, which describes sort of ability to access and raise funding, and sort of tied in again with kind of the local agenda with the parish council. So yeah, I really like the sound of that partnership.
Yeah, no, and our least, you know, it's the recent grant that we've got is actually a shared application, which is also very useful because it means that we you know, it brings us closer together in terms of delivery and trying to achieve projects collaboratively. So yeah.
The question from Jack: what sense does and has achieved inspirational, in part reflecting working vibrancy and skills within the village? Brilliant, Isabel. Oh, thanks, Jack. You did mention insurance there, and I know that insurance can be tricky for groups as well. So just to flag, we have a service. If a group wants to join us as one of our community groups, I think it's £78 a year. That then gives you access to our insurance provider as well. So I think there's kind of reduced rates for community groups as sort of as an extension of a kind of volunteer group of Cumbria Wildlife Trust. So if anyone is struggling with that, do get in touch and I can share details about that. It sounds like we've got, yeah, we're keen to hear from Kim and what's going on in Ulverston. But is there any other final questions for Isabel before we move on to that? Great. Well, I can't see any hands raised there, but I'm sure if anybody has got any follow-on questions, if they ever want to email me, I can forward those on to Isabel or sort of keep that chat going. Yeah. But thank you very much, Isabel. Kim, yeah, we've got a bit of space for you. So yeah, tell us more. Tell us what's going on.
Okay, I will be succinct. I'm involved with 2 projects in Ulverston. One is Ulverston in Bloom. And so we're trying to do what we would do as in terms of the flowers around the town in a biodiverse way. So over the last 2 years, we've created 7 new large flower beds that we can plant up with pollinator friendly planting. So I think that's been a good addition. And we've also raised the money and put out 30 Swift boxes as part of our biodiversity activity, and we've put up information boards in 4 places around the town explaining what biodiversity is and what we're doing and what people individually can do. And some of this is linked to the fact that we commissioned a biodiversity plan for the town 2 years ago, and so we're working to the items that were in that plan. I'm also involved with Gill Banks, and that's an area of woodland along a stream, and that had an ecologist draw up a woodland management plan 6 years ago. So we're working to that, and we had a review at 5 years which listed huge numbers of additional plants, lots of extra birds, all this that are seen since we've been taking laurel out and planting native plants. So they're both those projects are going really well. What we have got is a situation where there are some other areas in the town that were mentioned in the town management plan, and some of those are doing very well, like Ford Park. But our park, Lightburn Park, is desperately in need of help. So the Friends of the park have asked Ulverston in Bloom to help, and we just don't have the capacity to do that as well. And there are some very good things about the park, but there could be an enormous amount more done around biodiversity. And I think that really requires the council, somebody like Polly, to work in partnership with the Friends of Lightburn Park, who are not here tonight. But I know they struggle because they're all working, so it's quite difficult in comparison with groups that have quite a few people who are retired in them. So I think while I know that we're doing some really good things in Ulverston and we're working to professional management plans, I think that our actual park, council park, really could be improved a lot, both the one in Croftlands and Lightburn Park. So I think there's some big projects there that it would be nice to see move on.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I think there's a point there, isn't it? It comes back to what people were saying before, that sort of that capacity and recruiting volunteers or help. But it sounds like there might be an idea around a project there focused on the park. I have just dropped in a link in the chat for the Cumbria and Bloom website, which has got, I've also mentioned sort of the It's Your Neighbourhood awards there as well. So I know that's an RHS initiative, but I think they can help offer advice and support for smaller community groups as well. And they have sort of various stages of award for it.
Well, they give you feedback when they come and judge you. So we've had lots of It's Your Neighbourhood projects.
Yeah.
And we've got outstanding projects like the Gill Banks It's Your Neighbourhood project. And they just say, keep up the good work. They can't tell us anything else.
Well, I'm glad to hear they're pleased. But yeah, it's great that it sort of links in, like I say, with your sort of the biodiversity plan for the town and things. It really shows it's sort of all connected and thought through. If I can make finish that. I'm gonna pop another link in the chat as well about Coronation Gardens, which is an initiative through the Wildlife Trusts, Garden Organic, Incredible Edible, and the WI, which provides lots of resources and insights into gardening for wildlife and for growing food as well. And that's got resources for community groups and schools, and things. I'll stick that in, that could be useful to folk. But thank you, Kim. I'm just wondering now, we've got a little bit of time left before the end. Are there any other questions? We've rattled through this evening, haven't we? You've heard from me talking about Wilder Cumbria and what support and resources we can offer. And a lot of you've mentioned other staff in other teams at the Wildlife Trust as well. So we've got, we've got quite a diverse range of things going on. And then you've heard from the council as well about what other projects can get involved with and what support there is, as well as the 2 case studies. Oh, Wendy, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Hi. Always a lot about trees and woodlands, and Danny, who was mentioned before, she manages our woodland, which is what's it, the Amazon is, but this is a
Atlantic rainforest.
Temperate rainforest.
Yeah, temperate rainforest. So, you know, and people have been into this tree planting and everything for such a long time. But I'm part of a group called For Pete's Sake. And in this area, sort of surrounding Kendal, there's a lot of wetlands, which is why I was interested in these mini wetlands that John was talking about. And a lot of people don't realize that although they're a tiny percentage of land cover compared with woodlands and forests in this country and in the world, they actually are much better carbon sinks than forests. And I just don't think we promote them enough. And we've got ones that are open to the public, like Falshaw Moss and places, but there's so much. It's not so obvious as going for a walk in the woods and you can just sort of look at the trees and appreciate. You need to get close up to really understand and appreciate peatlands and wetlands. And I think it's something that perhaps the Wildlife Trust, I know you're doing work on it, and I know you've done a lot of restoration, but it isn't such a public facing thing. And it needs to be, not just in Cumbria, but nationwide and worldwide. And you know, that's something I'd like to see pushed more.
Well, that's interesting actually, Wendy. That's great to hear. Just let me look at my notes here, because I had a meeting with our peatlands team just earlier this week, who were mentioning a festival of bogs, which is going to happen next year. So we're part of the Great North Bog, which is 6 peat partnerships, about sort of upland peat partnerships across the country. England is the world headquarters for upland peat bogs. And we're looking at hosting one event per partnership, probably in July next year, sharing some films about bogs and hosting some discussion and some chat and really celebrating them, because as you say, they're absolutely fantastic for both locking away carbon forever and also providing these really fantastic habitats for birds and insects and all those lovely mosses that are on them. So yeah, big up the bogs. Thanks, Wendy.
There are some wonderful people in our very small group who have created peat bog, which is a life-size sort of dummy, and myrtle, and they go along when these 2 people go and give talks at wherever they can. They're sort of North Lancashire, Lancaster area, sort of, you know, on our borders, and they would love to get involved in that. They've written books, they've made little children's books, and they've made little films, and we're a tiny group, but we've done masses and masses and masses of
Wendy, I'll drop you an email next week and see if we can put you in touch with our bog team.
Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
And just really quickly on the council side of things, is something that we're really keen to support, and we do support Cumbria Wildlife Trust and the University of Cumbria on 2 large peat projects. And it's in our climate change action plan. We want to support peatland restoration within the county, or our half of the county, should I say. So yeah, definitely important.
Have we got any final questions for the panel?
I have a question. Can you hear me? I'm Terry Parr. I'm working with I'm part of a new organisation called Natural Kendal, which looks to bring together nature recovery activities on a town scale and address both bigger issues, but also smaller patches of land that might be pocket parks. It's been a very interesting session, and thank you very much for the experiences that have been told about. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from that. But I couldn't help noticing the result of the questionnaire you asked at the start seemed to have people saying they would like advice on how to deal with gardening issues. And this really hasn't been touched upon. There's a tremendous amount of potential in people's gardens, front and back. And one of the things when you're working on a town scale that is more difficult to do is how you can coordinate activities at a garden scale to get this kind of network mosaic of wildlife friendly places. The benefits of being able to do that would be tremendous for wildlife. But it's interesting, we haven't really tackled it in any of the discussions we've had. What are you thinking about this, or is it outside your remit as well?
My remit, no, it is something that I am thinking about. Cumbria Wildlife Trust, we do have a wildlife gardening newsletter that I think members can sign into, but I guess that's sort of preaching to the converted in some ways, isn't it? Something that I'm looking at a very, very early stage at the moment is thinking about wildlife garden champions, perhaps looking at our volunteers base and seeing if we've got folk that can maybe help advise garden owners on what they could do. And on a larger scale, I know the wildlife trusts are looking at a wildlife gardening certificate that could be given to people, so sort of at the top end of the scale. So yeah, we've not talked about it a lot tonight. It is on the radar very much so, and now we've got a gardener back here at Plumgarth as well. I'm thinking we can do a lot at Plumgarth as a kind of exemplar garden and a potential base for hosting some workshops and training events here on the garden. So watch this space for that. But thank you, Terry.
Great.
I've just stuck the poll back up there as well, so because you mentioned it. So yeah, it looks like wildlife friendly gardening is really popular. Yeah, the woodland orchards and hedgerows management is the next one, isn't it? And the wildflower meadow. So this is all stuff that we can look at how we can deliver. And then yeah, sort of the more kind of the group organizing side of things about the volunteer management and involving young people is something perhaps I'll go away and talk to Cumbria CVS about and see what scope there is for hosting and running some advice sessions around that. I'll just have I closed the poll? can't see what I've done with it. I'll stop sharing that poll to get it out of the way if it's in the in people's line of sight there. So yeah, it has been a real whistle-stop tour, hasn't it? And if you, oh, hello, Wendy. I think you're on mute, Wendy.
Yeah, the other thing, because there's so much people wanting to do wildlife meadows, and Giles knows about this, is trying to get sorry, this time of night my words fail me. The grass by the roads.
Oh, the verges.
The verges. And like coming into my village, Staveley, we've got a really wide grassy verge. And for years, we've been battling with the parish council and wanting to cut it less. And, you know, it's not part of highways that, you know, it's a local thing. And I think rather than this idea of meadows, which is like a big field or something, those are themselves long, thin fields. And lots of towns and villages have got these big grassy verges leading into the town or the village. And it would be just great if we could turn those into meadow grass and get rid of what is there. But it's a massive job. But it's something I've been, you know, trying to force the parish council's hand for ages, and we've now got a tiny little test patch that hasn't been mowed since the spring. But, you know, they're very resistant to it. They just want it cut.
Yeah, that's very tricky, isn't it? If you sort of, in with the community and haven't got a consensus on that, but it sounds like you're taking the right step there with the test patch. Okay, my colleagues at the council, because I know there has been sort of highways projects in the past, hasn't there, about enhancing verges and things. Is there anything currently going on?
I think we've looked into it, but the main issue is safety for cars, that kind of stuff. But I guess it depends whereabouts the verge is, because most people that come into Staveley should be driving quite slow at the 20 miles per hour. But if it's a highway site or Westmorland and Furness verge, we'll review it. It's normally with highways, it's not always approved for safety and for driving, but we'll try our hardest, is what I'll say. If you have got a verge that is Westmorland and Furness, we'll review it.
Quite a lot at the moment. I think quite a lot of our elected members are quite keen to see the verges left wilder where safety allows. So there's lots of discussions taking place from what I understand.
Yeah, the ground maintenance team look all the time for areas that we don't cut as often, but like I say, we have to maintain sight lines, so but we do look at areas all the time, and we get various comments when we leave them. Like you say, people want it left and then we cut it, and then people want it, you know, we have to try and please everybody, which is tricky.
Isabel's just put a suggestion in the chat there. It'd be really useful to get some case studies about how councils have successfully implemented verge projects. So yeah, I don't know if we can share anything like that with Isabel and have a look.
Yeah, I could email some across.
Fantastic, thank you, Annie. Right, well, we're almost at time. I think we've got time for one last question. If anybody's got any burning questions at the end. Okay, well, thank you. Well, I will get this recording up onto our website as soon as I can. Bear with me on that. So if there is stuff that you just you can't remember exactly what was said, you can go back and have a look through it. And I know there were quite a few folk that couldn't make it tonight because I had a diary clash with Steve talking about Skiddaw. So I know some folk were keen to hear from him. So if there's anybody else who's interested in it, I'll get that up, so share it. And Andy, did you mention we were going to try and put some of all these useful resources that we've shared in the chat? We'll pull those together, those links together, and email them out to you. And we're also hoping to host this webinar for the Eden area and for the Furness area as well. This is our very first one, so thank you very much everybody for your patience while we figured things out and how it worked. But we'll ask as well in my email if you've got any feedback about what was particularly useful or what worked well for you or what didn't. I'd be really grateful to hear it, so that when we run some future sessions we can take all of that on board. But I wanted to thank all of our speakers tonight for sharing time with us, putting together those really useful presentations. I think there's been a lot of food for thought here tonight, and quite a bit to follow up on. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.